You're listening to Wycombe Sound, online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM.
Welcome along to the latest episode, 4 if you're counting, of the Wycombe Wanderers Show with myself, Colin and Bob. We're with you for the next hour covering all things Wycombe Wanderers. We'll hear from Manager Gareth Ainsworth speaking after the defeat to Swansea on match day 3, as they call it, if it was in the Champions League. But it's in the Championship, so I think we still call it that.
We will be catching up with Trust Chairman Nigel Kingston. They've recently launched a new membership scheme. We will be finding out more about that and just how important the Trust remains to Wycombe Wanderers, even in these days of the Couhig family taking over Wycombe Wanderers.
Trust Chairman is a good motto, isn't it? The chairman everywhere, I think.
I think that is, yes.
Trust Chairman.
Yes, and particularly when you are the Trust Chairman of the Chair Boys.
There's a lot of chairs there. Much furniture included in that. Also, we'll be hearing from 50s winging hero, if that's a thing, Len Worley, who was compared to Stanley Matthews of amateur football in his day. Fantastic catching up with him to find out what it was like playing for the club in the 1950s. That's coming up as well.
I shall speak to Gareth Ainsworth ahead of this weekend's game against Luton Town. We've obviously had some fantastic games at Kenilworth Road over the years. You'll remember Alfie Mawson's wonder goal back in 2015. We'll speak to Gareth and he will give his thoughts about why we shouldn't be too concerned so far about the Chairboys' form this season.
And we've got a Twitter poll as well. We want to hear your thoughts on who are Wycombe Wanderers' fiercest rivals. All sorts of ways that they could qualify. Could be geographical, could be, I guess, contests that they've had. We'll be discussing that, but you're welcome to tweet that via, well, Twitter, to be honest, using the hashtag TWWS. Stands for the Wycombe Wanderers Show. It does. That is the easiest way of getting in touch with us, but you can also contact us via Facebook, or you can email studio@wycombesound.org.uk. We have Luke standing by, who has agreed to produce the programme after doing drive time, even though he's a little bit tired and couldn't see earlier on out of his glasses, but he can see now, so he will be able to read your tweets, I'm glad to say. He's demisted after the face mask glasses combo, which causes a lot of problems. Which never goes well, does it? No. Somebody must have thought, well, what about if you put the face mask on and you're a spectacles wearer? And don't worry, that'll be fine. Does that qualify you as one of the people who doesn't then have to wear a mask if you're a spectacles wearer? I don't think so, no. I don't think it does either. So let's kick off with... let's get back to the football. Review, if you like, of Swansea. We'll hear from Gareth and his thoughts in a few moments' time. But you were at Adams Park. I was, yes. It was sort of concerning the first 15, 20 minutes. Swansea were a really good team. You could see that actually, yes, they were in the Premier League a couple of seasons ago. You could see that actually their players, were possible Premier League quality, playing in the Championship. Whereas obviously you can think of Wycombe, being slightly maybe the other way round and almost, actually most of these players obviously were assembled in League One and are now playing in the Championship. And so when they got those two quite quick early goals, and both times Wycombe sort of failed to deal with a cross, and then the ball was just sort of basically dinked past Ryan Alsop. They weren't stunning goals or anything like that. You did think, oh goodness me, it might be another long afternoon, a bit like up at Ewood Park. But luckily, actually, it didn't then play out like that. And particularly second half, Wycombe played so much better and did, that certainly competed very well with Swansea in the same way that they did in that very first game, the Carabao Cup game against Brentford. It reminded me of that, where actually watching it, you thought, we're going to be all right in this league. We can hold our own. It's just we need to cut out the mistakes. We just need to be a little bit smarter, I think. And I think that A, that first goal, and B, the first points won't be too far away. Well, it's important, obviously, to remain positive. There are so many different ways you can look at it. But I was reading one of the match reviews, and someone saying that in the Championship, it was the worst start, losing 3 games since 2006, and Colchester, apparently they lost their opening 3 games as well. But as you say, when you consider the opponents that have been put in front of the team so far, so we had Rotherham first, obviously, who were League One colleagues from last season, of course, but then Blackburn and Swansea as well, as you say, who not that long ago were top flight sides themselves. Yeah, I mean, definitely. It was a shame about Rotherham. We should have won that game. We could have won that game. And had we got 3 points, had we even got a point, I don't think anyone would have even batted an eyelid at the fact that, yes, OK, we got beaten 5-0 up at Blackburn, but, again, very, very good side. They took their chances. They didn't have many more, maybe a few after it was 5-0 where Ryan Alsop kept us in it, but they were really, really clinical. And again, the same against Swansea. Had we picked up points against Rotherham, you would have thought, well, yeah, OK, probably we were always going to struggle against Blackburn and Swansea. And what I would say to the people who are saying, worst start since 2006 in Colchester, well, I'm sorry, I would, much rather be Wycombe Wanderers and being sort of like realistic and going into these games thinking, well, yeah, it's not going to be an easy season, as Gareth keeps saying. Whereas you look at Nottingham Forest and Derby, who, both of them must have thought, well, this season we're going to probably be challenging for the playoffs. Obviously, Forest last season just missed out on the playoffs, which was slightly hilarious, the way that they tumbled out on that last evening. And Derby County with Wayne Rooney in the side, both of them would have been thinking, well, yeah, promotion this season is a good possibility. And there they are, down the bottom with us and Sheffield Wednesday. So I would still much rather be us than one of our East Midlands friends.
Absolutely. No, as I say, really important to keep positive. And whenever you hear Gareth speak as well, he's definitely an advocate of the positivity. Bob spoke to him after the Swansea game to get his thoughts.
Gareth, did you think that you should have had a free kick in the build-up to Swansea's first goal?
Maybe. It's not me to shout about that, but I mean, We've got plenty to work on ourselves before we start looking at referees, and we're going to do that. But really proud of the second half performance. I think we really took the game to Swansea, and we need to start doing that now in other teams. We've come up. It's a big step, but I'm pleased with what I saw today. I think we're starting to bridge that gap slowly.
Yeah, I mean, I said it to you several times before already this season. Once again, yeah, I felt Wycombe played well, particularly in that second half.
Yeah, the goals coming, I'm sure, and the wins coming, but give us some time assessing the squad. I know I've had 3 games. Maybe just get to the international break, and then we can get into all this chaos that we've been used to in Leagues 1 and Leagues 2. All this fixture build-up that's going to happen in the Championship. I'm really hoping it plays in our favour, and I can rotate like I've always rotated and get some good results.
I think it's very important actually to say to the fans, well, yeah, 3 games, it's only 3 games, we've still got 43 to go. Remember a good few years ago where Newcastle United lost their first 3 in the Champions League, won the next 3 and still got through, so it's only 3 games.
You compare us with whoever. Nottingham Forest as well have lost their first 3, so there is some comparisons, but listen, I'm pleased. We're learning, we're building, and I'm looking forward to the next game.
How pleased were you with Dennis coming in from Everton today?
Yeah, I thought he had a great second half. Really established. Looked like he'd been playing football at Championship level for a long time. First half, I thought we sat off Swansea a little bit too much, and it was hard to bridge the gaps, and that's going to happen. But hopefully we can learn from that and, like I say, put some good performances together in the coming weeks.
I think Gareth said as well, obviously, before the season started, it would take sort of 4 to 5 weeks just to even get his feet under the Championship table, if that's a thing, and not the Championship table, but the
which you can buy an IKEA.
Not the table, obviously, because no points and no goals so far. Not that table, but just to get a feel of what it's like at that level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the fact that Dennis Adenron came in, it was his first game. He hasn't actually started for Everton yet, so he was getting used to it. But you could instantly see the quality there, and I think he's going to be a fine loan signing for Wycombe Wanderers, particularly defensively. Actually, he looked really impressive last Saturday. And again, Gareth did hint when I spoke to him earlier on, and we will hear that later in the show, that that he is still looking at a couple of players possibly coming in before the transfer window slams shut.
And Dennis wasn't the only debutant on Saturday either.
No, so I mean it was an interesting team lineup, because obviously we had 4 changes. So Ryan Tafazoli came in for Darius Charles, who was obviously suspended because he picked up the red card. Jason McCarthy came in for Joe Jacobson. Dennis Adenron was playing for Daryl Horgan, and Alex Samuel came in for Scott Cashgett. Tafazoli looks he looks the part. He's a big defender. He's a big unit, as my son would describe him as. And yeah, I think he's going to look good, and fingers crossed, yes, that he does actually sort out some of the defensive problems. Similarly, again with Jason McCarthy, really good to see him come in, and the fact that he came in for Joe Jacobson, and Jacobson clearly is such a talented player, and so dangerous as well with regards to free kicks and corners. That again, that I think that's a really positive thing to see, that actually we can rotate people like that. Jason McCarthy came in and gave a really good account of himself. Actually, particularly there were some spells spells towards the end of the first half where Swansea really couldn't deal with the combination of McCarthy and Fred Onyedimna going down the wing, and that for a while looked like our best source of goals.
I think Daryl Horgan as well is someone who I'm especially excited about seeing more of. I don't just mean in supermarkets.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I saw him in Sainsbury's last week, which was a bit of a surprise. But I didn't approach him, and he certainly wasn't doing that thing where looking around, seeing who recognises me. He came on in the second half. He had Wycombe's best chance actually, which was an overhead kick, which unfortunately went straight at the Swansea keeper. And you just think, if it had just gone either side, you never know. That might have given us, a slight way back. And again, I know it's a cliche. I know people keep saying it, but you really did realise the impact that it has not playing in front of a crowd. Had Wycombe Wanderers come out second half 2-0 down against Swansea, the whole of the terrace would have got going, and particularly things like Daryl Horgan with his overhead kick. There would have suddenly been a real belief that actually, well, hang on, if we get a goal back here, it's not too much of an exaggeration that we might go and get another one and snatch a point. And you just think, because the fans aren't there isn't that slight added sort of impetus that you actually get when, yes, you're playing at home and all of your fans suddenly actually, get behind the team and spur them on.
So talking of fans, the Wycombe Wanderers Trust this week have launched a brand new scheme for their membership, and I've been speaking to their chair, Nigel Kingston, to find out how key the Trust is in terms of ownership for the club.
The Trust is very important. It actually owned the football club from 2012 until February of this year, when the final deal was done with the Coigs. And during that period, when we owned the football club completely, we managed to keep it solvent, although I have to say that was a battle from time to time. And we went through various phases of struggling for funds, but the fans, I have to say, were fantastic during that. We had the Chairboys funders, where the fans loaned the club $450,000. We had the share scheme, which was launched in 2014, and the fans put forward virtually $700,000. And then we had the 500 Club on 3 different occasions, which raised $170,000. So really, the fans kept the club going all through that time. So that was an amazing achievement. And when we got to the point where we were struggling to continue to raise money, that's when the Coigs came up with the deal that we subsequently put to legacy members in November last year, and then finally signed in February this year. And it's been very successful since then. So yeah, it's all good news, but the trust is still very important. We still own 25% of the football club, and we have 2 trust directors that sit on the football club board. So we have a lot of influence in the club. Obviously, we don't control it, the Coigs do, but we have a very good working relation with the Coigs as well.
It must be such a fascinating insight as well. Sometimes not particularly pleasant, I imagine, either. But to know, what financially is required to keep the club going.
It would certainly give you a few sleepless nights to have seen some of the figures over the past few years. Yeah, it's very difficult because you've got very definite fixed outgoings in terms of the running of the club, the playing budget, which is obviously one of the big ones. And everybody's naturally inclination is to make the playing budget as large as possible so that the football club can be successful on the pitch. But there comes a time when if you've not got the income coming in, then you've got to rein back those ambitions. And that's always the difficult balancing point. And like many football clubs, you've got to have cash, because if there isn't cash to pay the daily outgoings, you're in trouble. But anyway, we got through that by hook or by crook, and we're where we are in the Championship and looking upwards.
It must be so pleasing for you to have put in, such hard work as a trust and to be in this, not comfortable, I guess, but much better situation.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's not comfortable at the minute because there we were, all of us expecting to start getting people back into the grounds, and suddenly that's gone further down the road. How many months, none of us know, but all the income forecasts that the club was looking at have gone into the sunset to some degree because there's no money coming through the turnstiles. Obviously, there's other income streams into the business, but money through the turnstiles is important, and getting the fans back into the stadium is even more important. So, yeah, that's been quite a concern over the last few weeks.
And you've launched this new style of membership. What's brought that about?
We wanted to do a couple of things on the membership front. One, we wanted to add value to the Trust membership scheme for the fans so that we were able to give them a benefit package that was worthwhile. We think what we've put together is quite a good benefit package, and we wanted to simplify the scheme because we had people paying various different amounts of money, so we've simplified it. And obviously the subs to the Trust is one of the major ways that the Trust raises money, and given that we have 25% ownership of the club, we want to retain that going forward, and having enough funds behind the Trust in the future is important. So that was the other side of it.
Talk us through some of the benefits.
Okay, well, one of the key benefits is admission to what we call an open session of every monthly Trust board meeting for the fans, for all the Trust board members, so that they can hear what's being discussed at the Trust board meetings, and at the end of that there's a half an hour question and answer session that the members can participate in. And we kicked that off in February, and then the virus hit, so we've been on Zoom meetings since then. But for the October meeting, we're going to go back to the open session and run it online. We're not sure exactly which mechanism, whether it'll be Zoom or whether it'll be similar to what the club's done before with having a number of people talking to the members. But it will be possible for October for the members to join in the board meeting. So that's good, because it means everybody gets a first-hand view, if they want, of what's going on. The other key parts of the membership package is that all Trust members will get a £10 gift voucher, which can be used in the club shop, online, or when we get back into the stadium in the bars. And this is something which we're very grateful to Rob and Pete Cooig, because they're funding that to help the Trust, so that's great. There'll also be priority booking after season ticket holders for all cup matches. We will, at some point towards the latter part of the season, hold a special Trust night, so that'll be an annual get-together for fans and for players and managers, which we've done in the past, and yeah, that always goes down well. We've also agreed with Rob and with Pete that we'll have a number of streamed live webinars where, for Trust members only, where themselves and Gareth and probably myself will be there and willing to take questions from Trust members. So again, that gives them a bit more access to what's going on in the club.
How can people find out more about the Trust membership if they'd like to get involved?
Just go on to the Wycombe Wanderers Trust website, and everything's there. We modernised the website about 2 months ago, so there's a news section that tells you how to join, tells you how to get in touch with the directors. There's a bit about each of the Trust directors there. So there's an awful lot of information on the Trust website.
And just finally, as the chair, what's the main message you'd like to get across to people about the Trust and the work that you do?
Well, we're trying to be very open, very transparent. We're trying to make people see that the Trust is worthwhile and it's worth being a member. And obviously we are trying to raise funds so that we can maintain our 25% share in the club in the future. And I don't know whether you saw, but we ran an auction over last weekend of the shirts that were worn in the Wembley playoff final, and we managed to raise £6,300 for those shirts, which was fantastic. So that's another quite large contribution to Trust funds. So yeah, we'll be doing more of those sorts of events going forward to make sure that we, as I say, have enough funds to retain our 25% membership going forward. But yeah, the message to fans is join the trust, find out more about the club. We're the link to the club for the fans. And anything you need to know, you can talk to us either directly by getting in touch with the directors or email us through the website.
That is such a great news story, isn't it? That you were able to raise so much money from the as you say, the auction of those shirts, that people want to be associated with that night in July.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And it was like a lot of auctions, they're actually quite good fun because we held it open for 48 hours and you get the initial bids coming in, and then there's a bit of a lull, and then there's various other people coming in, and then the last few hours, suddenly it starts getting quite exciting. And the bidding stopped at 12 o'clock on Saturday night, and yeah, there's some super bids that come in that last hour or so that drove the total up to that 6,300 figure. Great to speak to Nigel, and a really good fundraiser as well with the auctioning of the shirts.
A very good idea.
And really important that the trust has that role and can continue to fundraise for the club as well. Still to come on the Wycombe Wanderers Show this week, we'll be catching up with wing wizard from Wycombe Wanderers, Len Worley from the 1950s. That's on the way as well. Plus, we'll be previewing the Luton game, and we'll be telling you our social media poll for this week as the Wycombe Wanderers Show continues here at Wycombe Sound.
The Wycombe Wanderers Show.
Welcome back to the second half of the Wycombe Wanderers Show. There's 3 halves in our show.
2 halves and extra time is how we like to think of it.
Still to come, we'll be previewing the game at Kenilworth Road on Saturday, which you're going to.
I am indeed, yes. We will be chatting to Len Worley. If this was you talking about it, you'd try and fit as many W's as possibly you could into the link, but I'm not going to do that.
Well done. Very sensible.
But he does tell us about playing in the FA Amateur Cup final back in the 1950s.
What a great period to be playing football in.
Absolutely. Fascinating.
Imagine if you could take a 1950s player and then bring them to the 2020 season and say, look, this is what it's going to be like.
I mean, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? If actually you could take a player and like almost play teams from the 1950s against some of the teams from today and see, are Manchester City and Liverpool, are they really that good? Or if they came up against the Stanley Matthews Blackpool of the 1950s, how would they get on?
Such an incredibly different pace of the game as well.
Yeah. I think that the players from today would probably be victorious just in the just the physicality, just the fitness, all of the science that goes into it today. Whereas clearly back in the 1950s, as Simon Garner was telling us last week, very much, still a time where yes, you might have had a beer and even a cigarette in his case, sort of at half time.
And the shorts were much longer, the ball were much heavier.
Indeed. Whereas you think of like Arsene coming into Arsenal those years ago, and clearly it was a dressing room culture that was very much geared around going to the pub and doing that sort of thing, and completely revolutionised the whole thing, and got them eating right and got them not doing the bad things. And look where football is now.
Absolutely. Something else that's very modern, sort of, is the interactive element to our show. We're inviting you to get in touch with us via Twitter. We're having a Twitter poll this week on who you consider to be Wycombe Wanderers' greatest rivals.
So we were having a chat before the show and talking about who Wycombe's big rivals are in the Championship, and we were talking about Luton and obviously Watford this season and Reading, and then that conversation went a little bit wider into, who are Wycombe's rivals, because the fact that we spoke to Len from the 1950s, and very much we said, well, if you're a Wycombe fan of a certain age, you probably actually automatically say Slough Town. But if you're a Wycombe fan of another age, you wouldn't consider them at all as being Wycombe's main rivals. You would possibly think Colchester United, and then more recent fans might say them Bristol Rovers. And if you're looking at it from a local point of view, well, possibly Oxford. Luton, we have had some fairly sort of grudge-type matches. Nathan Jones hasn't always been the most complimentary with regards to us, so, they're possibly on that list as well.
And also there's sort of bogey teams as well, aren't there, that sort of down the years who've come to Adams Park, or we've gone to them and just had real difficulty playing against them, so they might be considered sort of fierce rivals as well. Geographically, Brentford, of course, I believe, are the nearest Football League club to us.
Yes, definitely. I mean, with regards to the bogey teams, Bristol Rovers certainly were, back in the 2014 season, when obviously they came to Wycombe on that sort of like must-win game. So it was the game before the last game. It was our last home game of the season. And of course, had we won, things would have been fine. But Bristol Rovers came and beat us. And I remember all of their fans at the end all singing, we're staying up and you're going down and all of that sort of stuff. And then, of course, we went to Torquay in that wonderful, wonderful day and they went down instead of us. But there's always then after that been that needle. And so you think, well, yes, they might be on the list as well for some people.
I wonder how it's judged, because obviously we won't be playing Slough, I imagine, for a while. So
exactly.
So there won't be any sort of grudge match there. And, other teams who are, obviously lower, might come up in the Cup, for example. We might have a game against Colchester, maybe Swindon even. Some fans don't like Swindon, do they? But as you say, there's Reading and Watford and Luton who are quite close by as well. And it's really interesting, I think, that, how you sort of judge what a rival is.
Yes. I mean, I think with regards to Watford and Luton, they've got each other.
Yes.
So I think you can almost count them out slightly. Oxford, obviously, they've got a thing about Reading and Swindon, haven't they?
Yes.
So, but definitely, again, I think there is a bit of an edge to that. Whenever Oxford have come to Adams Park, there's definitely a will to get one over on our friends up the M40.
I was going to say, it's interesting when games have names, isn't it? There's the M40 derby, and there's the 800 derby, which I realise that some Reading fans refer to the Wycombe game.
So that's named after the bus, is it? The 800 derby. I wonder who first of all.
That's the fairly frequent bus service that goes between Wycombe and Reading via Marlow, Henley, and lots of other.
If I was going to vote, though, I would definitely vote for Colchester. As somebody who became a Wycombe fan in the early 90s, definitely Colchester United. Yes, the rivalry where we were both in the conference, going neck and neck really the whole season through, and Colchester just managed to pip us. And I can remember then going to a Colchester game sort of like in maybe the early 2000s, and I hadn't been to many Wycombe games before then, and just walking down Hillbottom Road and just sort of the amount of chanting that was going on between both sets of supporters, and just thinking, blimey, okay, this is going to be quite tasty. And sure enough it was. And so Colchester for me, yes, have always been, they're the team that I would look for us to really beat, and be very satisfied when we do.
So I have some very early memories of some games that I used to go to, and I do recall some terrace chants about, most uncomplimentary actually, about Slough, as a place and a club, but also, as I sort of touched on earlier, does that not really count anymore, because we're quite unlikely to be facing them again?
I mean, you just don't know, do you?
Can you have rivals with someone that you won't be playing?
Well, yes. I suppose it depends what happens with regards to Slough. I mean, obviously they've got their new stadium. Have they got eyes on the conference and the National League? The National League South at the moment. But it's still going to take a while for us to become regular rivals again. But I'm fairly sure that it's one of those things, if we did then play them in the Cup, if we played them in a competitive game, I know we've played them in friendly games, we played them in the Cup, or if we were ever in the league with them, I think that would instantly become, a big attraction. And probably would be one of those games where actually, yes, you saw a few more police around than you might otherwise normally at a football match.
No, I definitely think Colchester's a good shout. It makes you, I can't really, as I say, sort of geographically, I think our nearest team are Brentford, but I can't really imagine considering Brentford as a local rival.
No, not really.
Because you think more their way, sort of QPR or...
Yeah, again, the fact that they're sort of London-based, but, they're a strange one as well, aren't they? Because they haven't, who are Brentford's big rivals? Off the top of your head, you would think, is it QPR, is it Fulham, is it Chelsea? But they've all got each other.
Exactly.
So Brentford exist in this sort of little bubble.
Perhaps they need a rival.
They need a rival, yeah. Well, and again, that's, I think, what was said about us and Colchester was, Colchester, yes, well, they probably don't like Southend, but Southend probably look more towards the East End of London and West Ham and Millwall and
it's a long way to Colchester,
teams like that. Whereas, Colchester and ourselves, well, yeah, actually, the whole thing turned out quite well, didn't it? It's like, well, yeah, okay, we haven't got a team that we really, really, really dislike, and neither of they, so we'll have each other.
Absolutely. So you can have a look on Twitter, and be interesting to get your thoughts, and we'll have a look at some of the suggestions by the end of the programme. First, though, it's been fantastic to speak to former players on the show. Last week we had Crease on. Was it last week? It was,
yes.
And that was from the early 90s, of course. Now we return, or go back even further, should I say, to the 1950s. And we might recall last week was the club's 133rd birthday. And back in the 50s, Wycombe had a fantastic winger who modelled himself on Sir Stanley Matthews, and his name is, I nearly said was, his name is Len Worley, and we caught up with him from his home in Chalfont St Giles to talk about how massively a part of the club's history he is.
Well, yeah, obviously it is an honour, really, particularly how successful the club has been over the years. I mean, I joined the club in 1954, would you believe? And I was only 17 years old. And it was a successful amateur club then. But now they've carried that success to the dizzy heights of the Football League Championship, which is, truly a remarkable achievement, particularly, I think, for a relatively small club on limited resources. I remember Gareth Ainsworth saying quite recently that they are now playing in the fourth best league in the world, which is quite staggering.
When you say 1954 like that, does that seem like quite a long time ago, or does it feel like not that long ago?
Time goes so quickly. It does seem quite a long time ago. And things have changed so much, of course. I mean, there's no doubt, the club has come an awful long way since those days. I mean, would you believe... do you remember the days when they played at Lokes Park?
Yes.
I mean, there we were supported very often by crowds up to about 12,000 people. Quite staggering. But since then, they've made their way through all the various leagues and moved the stadium from Lokes Park now to Adams Park, which was obviously a pretty good move. And they couldn't have achieved all of this, of course, without good managers that they've had in the past. Sid Can, who was a manager in the 50s, and then there was Brian Lee in the 70s, then Martin O'Neill in the 90s, and of course now Gareth Ainsworth. So they've all contributed to the success of this club.
It's so interesting, isn't it? You think of the club's achievement now, getting to the Championship, but in 1957, getting to the Amateur Cup final was a fantastic achievement as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But as I said earlier, I think you've got to sort of look at the club and realise how successful they've been all the way through. Right back to the 50s and now right through to now. It's been a remarkable achievement for the club.
Colin mentioned about getting to the FA Amateur Cup final.
Yep.
Tell us, because that was a very, very big deal back in the day. Obviously, the FA Amateur Cup doesn't exist anymore. That was almost alongside getting to the FA Cup final, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And when you consider that when we played at Wembley, there were 90,000 people there, which is incredible. And I think also in those days, there was, the first division, and then there was the second division. But also, the amateur game seemed to have a much higher profile then than it does now. Very often there were headlines in the papers about various amateur teams and amateur clubs, which you certainly don't find now. I mean, the whole system has changed.
I mean, these days, you almost struggle to find stuff about clubs in the Championship sometime because the Premier League, is such an enormous league now, and almost overshadows everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely right. It's dominant, isn't it? And it takes preference almost over everything.
Len, you must have such happy memories, though, of your time playing for the club. I know that you were known as the Stanley Matthews of amateur football.
Yeah, I mean, what a great accolade that is, because Stanley Matthews was my hero. And I was fortunate enough to meet him on a couple of occasions as well. So I based my game on his, right from the word go. And it was great. I just loved taking people on and beating them and trying to make the fullback look silly. Yeah, they were good days.
We were talking about the profile of amateur football, and so much so that you preferred that to the bright lights of Tottenham.
Well, yeah, you're right. I was very lucky, actually, right in the very first days. I was playing for Cheltenham St Peter Youth Club, and Cheltenham St Peter senior team had a friendly match with Wycombe Wanderers at the end of the season. And at the last minute, Cheltenham St Peter was short of a player. So they rang the youth club and said, "Oh, is there anyone available who can step in to play in this friendly against Wycombe Wanderers?" Anyway, they got in touch with me, and I said, "Oh, yeah, of course, I'll come along and play." I played, and Sid Can, the then manager, said, "Well, look, Len, how would you like to come over to Wycombe the next season?" And as I was only 16 at the time, I said, "Oh, yeah, yes, please." And that's what I did. Went to Wycombe, played 3 or 4 reserve team games, and then got into the first team. And I stayed in the first team for the rest of the season. We had a good time. And we reached actually the semi-final of the Amateur Cup that year. A game we lost to Bishop Auckland. But then, at the end of that season, I found myself going away with the England youth team for the European Youth Championships in Italy. So it's amazing how luck and being in the right place at the right time can make such a difference to what happens to you.
So is it true to say that you weren't even really looking to be a footballer particularly, but because you answered that call, you ended up playing them against Wycombe and then eventually for them and then for England amateurs?
That's right. Amazing, isn't it?
Wow, that's fantastic. And it must have been quite sort of eye-opening and quite a lot to get your head around to actually go in such a short space of time from just turning out for Cheltenham St Peter to suddenly actually being in the Wycombe first team.
I know. It was just amazing. And yet, it just seemed to come naturally, strangely enough. I remember the first game I played for Wycombe in the first team, I was playing against the then England fullback, and I gave him a roasting. And, everything seemed to just happen. Good things happened. And I then, as you probably know, stayed playing for Wycombe for 15-odd years and played 520-odd games for them. So, it was a great time there. Great team, great club.
And how did your involvement with Spurs come about? Because I know that's quite a good story as well.
Yes. Well, again, in those days, there were always the professional scouts buzzing around various grounds. And the first club that came in for me was Charlton Athletic. And they were quite persuasive and suggested that I come and play for them. And the chairman said, "Well, if you come over to East London and play for us as a professional, I'll also get you a job in my timber works, and you can be a timber salesman as well." And I thought, okay. So I went and played for Charlton for a year, decided that, no, I didn't really want to be a timber salesman, and I didn't particularly want to live in the east of London. So I then came back to Wycombe. And then the following season, Spurs came in, and they were very keen to sign me. And I thought, right, yeah, Tottenham, top team. So I went and played for them for a whole season, and I was understudy to Terry Medwin, the Welsh winger. And they were paying me a little bit of money under the counter. And at the end of the season, Bill Nicholson, the manager, called me into his office and said, "Look, Len, we want you to sign full-time pro." He said, "We can't afford to keep paying you this money underneath the counter. So, we want you to sign these pro forms." And I thought, I'm not sure that I really want to sign professional forms. At the time, I was playing for the England amateur side. I was also in the British Olympic team squad. I was studying. I was sort of thinking about getting married, and things just didn't seem right. So I said to Bill, "Well, thanks very much, but I'd like to go back to Wycombe." And they were keen to have me, and that's what I did.
Oh, it's a fantastic story. And obviously you played for the club for so long and you followed the club for so long. There are so many great stories linked with it. What is it that you think makes Wycombe such a special club?
That's a good question. First and foremost, they've always had a good reputation as a football club, right from, very early days. And I think that sort of word gets round, that they're an honest, sincere club. I mean, my time there, I've met so many really, really good players and played with so many good players and met so many good people. It just makes a big difference. Plus the fact, of course, they have managed to bring in some excellent managers. As I said earlier, you've had Brian Lee, who really did attract a lot of good players, and of course Martin O'Neill, which brought a lot of success to the club as well. And success breeds success. Just a good, successful club. Always also very well supported, which also makes a big difference.
No, definitely. No, obviously, you couldn't have imagined, I suppose, but even in more recent times, couldn't have imagined that they'd reach the dizzying heights of the Championship.
Unbelievable. It's just incredible. And, all credit to them. It's been fantastic.
Do you still wish you were playing?
Oh, do I? Yeah, absolutely. But, after the football, I took up tennis quite seriously and represented the county at tennis, so that sort of kept me pretty interested in and keeping myself fit as well, which does help. Nothing like exercise.
Fantastic to hear from Len Worley. I really got an idea of what it must have been like to play in the 50s, and lovely to hear him say as well, clearly how much he still misses football.
Definitely, and also the stories of the Amateur Cup as well. I imagine that players of that time really thrived on playing on those sort of occasions.
Yeah, absolutely, and fascinating as well that clearly he was quite happy to just play as an amateur for Wycombe Wanderers, and clearly did other stuff during the week in a way that you can't really imagine someone who was clearly that good, say today, doing anything like that. I know you've had your Jamie Vardys and whatever coming through non-league, but I can't think really that there's probably many players out there that could actually be playing at a high level who choose not to do so.
No, and it's fantastic to hear from former players, find out A, what they're doing now, B, what it was like to play for the club during their particular era. We heard from Crease last week, as I say, from the 90s, the 50s we've covered, and coming up in our next episode of Former Player Chats, we'll be speaking to John Maskell, the Wycombe Wanderers goalkeeper from the 80s.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that.
Still to come, we'll be previewing the Luton game. Bob's been speaking to Gareth, and also we'll find out how our poll results have polled about who...
We know what you mean.
Of who Wycombe Wanderers' fiercest rivals are. Still to come on the Wycombe Wanderers Show, here at Wycombe Sound.
The Wycombe Wanderers Show.
Final part of the Wycombe Wanderers Show, which for a little while we called the third half, but it seems more sensible now to call it Extra Time.
And you've got 10 minutes left to tell us who Wycombe's fiercest rivals are.
Perhaps there could be one we haven't considered that might be...
There may well be.
Telford. I don't know, that's just come into my head.
Yeah.
You've got a great rivalry with Telford.
Runcorn.
Yes, Runcorn's good.
Northwich, Victoria.
Alfreton Town. No, got a bit out of the way.
No.
I don't even know where that is.
And probably, again, if you're going back, it's probably more Isthmian League teams than actually conference team, because obviously we're in the Isthmian League. It's quite hard to say Isthmian League for a long time.
So let's look ahead to the tie at rivals Luton Town.
Yes, indeed.
It's coming up this weekend. It's only our second away game in the Championship.
It is, yeah. Short distance to Kenilworth Road. I had a chat to Gareth Ainsworth earlier on. But first of all, I started by asking him how he'd considered the game against Swansea, because clearly he watches it back on a video afterwards.
Definitely improvement. Like I said, I thought very nervy first half and almost a little bit hurt from the Blackburn game, really, still, and expecting the worst. But I've got to get that out of the boys. They've got to go into games believing that they're going to score first. So I think that was a lesson for me. And then second half, once we got into them, tactically got a little bit better. We were a match for Swansea, which was great. So some good players in that side, but again, really pleased and saw some progression, which is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very positive. Having watched all of the games, you competed really well against Brentford. You competed, obviously, and deserved to win the game, really, against Rotherham. First 15 minutes against Blackburn, you were really good. And again, second half against Swansea, you were excellent.
Yeah, there's plenty of positives in there. It's just getting them all together, joining them up, and I think we've still got some big players out. We need to make sure that, especially after the international break, we're all firing on, all cylinders. But we've got a big game now, Luton, and away at Luton's always a tasty fixture between the two clubs. It's been great. Nathan's done a good job there. So we're looking forward to that one on Saturday before, we take our little break and hopefully get a few bodies back into the squad.
We've had some great games at Kenilworth Road over the years. Alfie Mawson's wonder goal back in 2015, and then, of course, the 3-2 win a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really entertaining always. There's never a dull moment at Luton, and I think me and Nathan are passionate competitors, and on the pitch we had some great games against each other, so never mind our teams going up, and I'm sure that Saturday's going to be no different. Looking forward to it. Want to get our first goal, obviously that's something in the strikers. We want to make sure that they're scoring. And yeah, competitive in games. It's like I say, it's the start of the season. We're going to have days where we're going to have some bad runs, without a shadow of a doubt. This is the Championship. We're bridging a gap that we've never had to bridge before. Leagues 2, Leagues 1. We could bridge that gap, £1 million, a couple of £1 million maybe here and there. But when you're talking £50 million, trying to bridge that, it's quite a task, So I'm not saying I can't do it. Just give me a little bit of time to work this out, and I'm sure that the boys will be flying come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, one of the Swansea journalists turned to me when it was 2-0 last week and said, one of our players is probably on the same amount as your entire team, and that really did bring it home that actually, really, we were playing a team that, is Premier League in everything but name last week.
Yeah, Bob, honestly, the physicalities and the athlete attributes of some of these players is phenomenal. It really is. I was lucky enough to play in the top level, and I remember lining up against Arsenal once, and you had Vieira, Petit, Bold, Adams, Seaman, Bergkamp. Some of these names. These guys look on the TV like they're about 5'10", 5 foot. You line up in a tunnel against them. They're all 6'3". They're all absolute athletes, and we're getting a little bit of that at the moment. And it's a real education for us that we're going to have to find ways now of, yes, competing tactically and technically, but also we're going to have to work really hard to match some of these on the physical side of things. They're quick, they're strong, they get their bodies in the right areas, they solve problems, and so it's brilliant. Honestly, it's a real positive that we're learning so much, and as we go, improvement is all I'm looking for, and as long as we keep improving, teams, especially the team we're playing on Saturday, have shown exactly what you can do if you have a good end to the season, a good run. So we're never out this fight, no matter how dark it gets. We're going to be in this fight, and I'm going to make sure the boys are fighting and scrapping, and I want to get my first win soon on the table.
After the international break, I think it's fair to say it's a pretty brutal month after that, with games every weekend and midweek. Are you looking forward to the break just so that the lads can have a rest before that?
One thing is that we're used to this. Leagues 1 and Leagues 2 has taught us that fixture congestion, we can handle it. I've got a great medical team, a great sports science team, and I trust them implicitly with everything. And so I believe that we are prepared for this, probably more than some teams, because it's become a second Premier League, really, this Championship, and they do get the international breaks, they get rest bites between each game, and there's not as many cups. And we all know in Leagues 2 and Leagues 1, there was never a rest for us. It was a full blast for 9 months, Saturday, Tuesday, a lot of the time. So we are used to this. My only concern would be, the amount in the squad. We've got to make sure that they're all fit. They're all, we've enough players to get through this, because, again, other teams have bigger resources than us. So I'm trying to get a couple in, maybe one at least before the window shuts, and there's a Premier League window after that as well. So we're working really hard, but it's going to be an interesting one. See how the other teams react to these fixture congestions, as well as we know what we can do. We know it's not going to be anything new to us, but I'm just wondering whether some of these teams in the Championship may get a bit shell shocked with this congestion. We'll see, but I'm sure getting to Christmas will be tough, and everyone's going to be needed. So looking forward to that.
Tell us about some of the players that you've signed this week.
I mean, Dennis Deniman, fantastic acquisition to the squad. He's going to be something excellent. He's showed on Saturday how good he can play on the ball, off the ball. I think he's had a real stop-start career at Everton, and that's going to be good. And then the 4 young boys, Anis, Andron, Malachi, Curtis Anderson, Andre Burley. So all the B team boys that have come through, I think it's a real, not just the boys individual, this is a real positive sign for Wycombe Wanderers, building this B team, building some structure behind what we are. They're all competing with the first team. They're all training with the first team and holding their own. There's plenty of coaching to get into them, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see one or two of them make the squad before the end of this year. I'm really excited by one or two of them. Definitely, there's one or two that definitely need some work, and I'm not going to start naming names and making people feel good or not so good. Just that Sam's done a fantastic job getting these boys in. I think we're quite strong, and having a B team is going to enable us to get games into players who aren't playing regularly in the first team. Again, huge positive for Wycombe, and if the legacy for this promotion is we started our B team, we started some sort of youth structure, then it's only a positive for Wycombe.
And finally, give us an update on the two big guys, so Bayo and Uchi.
Yeah, both in contention for this weekend. Bayo not, actually. Uchi definitely. Bayo out on the pitches, wants to be in contention for this weekend, but again, I'm going to have to rule him out. But Uchi, you never know. He's very close, and I'm hoping he could play some part this weekend. And if not, definitely after the international break, they'll both be very close to the first team. So looking forward to definitely getting them two back. But at the moment, got everything to focus on Luton today and how we can try and get the points from Kenilworth Road.
Plenty of positives there from Gareth, and great to hear there's some reinforcements coming as well.
Indeed, and it'll be interesting to see how we get on with playing Luton. They started off really, really well, so they 4 games in a row that they won, but the last couple have not gone their way, so they lost to Manchester United in the Carabao Cup, a game that they probably thought that they'd do all right in, I would think, as they were at home, and obviously Man United had started so badly, and then they lost to their big rivals Watford at the weekend at 1-0, so hopefully we will add to that. Talking of the big rivals and Wycombe's big rivals, many thanks to Chris, who's got in touch to say definitely in the 1950s Bishop Auckland were our nemesis, as they seemed to beat us on many, many occasions. And also thanks to Ian as well, who says Slough Town were always our big rivals throughout the 60s and 70s and always will be.
Oh, and I think, as you say, Colchester as well are a big, definitely a big thorn in the side.
Yes, I think when you tally up all of the votes, Colchester have just pipped Slough as being the biggest rivals for Wycombe. So we can announce that yes, Colchester United remain, I think, our biggest rivals.
But hopefully, we won't be facing them this season.
No, I wouldn't have thought so unless it's in the FA Cup.
Could be, of course. Yeah, that'd be exciting, wouldn't it? If we had a really good cup run.
Yes, I mean, wouldn't that be great? We would enjoy that, and of course, fantastic that we will go straight into the third round of the FA Cup. So that'll be good, and nice that we're not having to worry about the Checker Trade leasing DAF Cup thing this year.
And normally also not really affected by the international break, because Leeds 1 and 2 still play, don't they, normally with the
That's right, yes.
break?
So we will have the international break to recover. And as Gareth says, that I think when we then come back and then we're playing pretty much, weekend, midweek, well, yeah, hopefully that's something that actually we'll be more used to than some of the other championship teams.
No, definitely. You get a real good feeling, don't you, that there's a sort of an up when getting up and running in the division, and goals will come, points will come as well, which is much to look forward to and be positive about.
Let's hope that we have one of those remarkable games again at Kenilworth Road, like we had, like the 3-2 from a couple of years ago and the Alfie Mawson goal from 2015. Let's hope that we have that on Saturday.
Hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of the show. Fantastic to speak to Nigel, the chair of the Wycombe Wanderers Trust, and Len Worley, of course, and his recollections of the 1950s. Join us next week when we'll be looking back on the Luton game and previewing the international break.
And you can get us on podcast as well, so if you've missed any of it, you can get us on that.
The Wycombe Wanderers Show.